going and trash talking Rashid Mazian. The shush was towards Mazian. The bye-bye was towards the coach of the Connecticut Sun, who obviously sent out Layla Khan to hack the shit out of Caitlin Clark for 40 minutes. So, or for 36 minutes, however much she played. And yes, obviously it was gone towards the coach. But let's take a listen to what he said after the game. Whether or not he pulled I couldn't even say like a Shara Reid, because there's been no coach that have gotten into a Caitlin other than like Noel Quinn. Was it Noel Quinn? Was she the Seattle Storm coach?
The finger went to the lips, and the message was sent loud and clear. Caitlin Clark didn't just beat them on the scoreboard, she humiliated their leadership in front of a national audience. The shush was directed right at Rashid Mazian, while the bye-bye wave was reserved for the Connecticut Sun bench. It was a cold, calculated move that left the arena in a state of absolute shock. This wasn't just a rookie being cocky, this was a superstar announcing that the old guard no longer held any power over her. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, and the fallout was only beginning.
Defense is like, I mean, Layla did well, but like, yeah, what do you think she can do? And obviously, look, Mazian has as a coach, he has put his game plans for Caitlin has been to be physical with her, rough her up, and to an extent where it's like we've seen Caitlin take more hard hits against Connecticut than any other team. That is a fact. That is a fact. And this is almost like I don't mean this in like a bad way.
But what happened after the final whistle was even more baffling than the game itself. Instead of firing back or calling out Clark's perceived lack of respect, the Sun coach did the unthinkable. He stood in front of the media and showered her with nothing but praise. He called her one of the best players in the entire world, even after she had spent the last 40 minutes making his life a living nightmare. This sudden shift from a heated game-time rivalry to post-game adoration sent shockwaves through the league and left fans wondering if the pressure was finally getting to him.
That is a fact. And this is almost like I don't mean this in like a bad way. For the like Rashid Mazian not admitting defeat, but like basically coming out of a game where his player got cocked and saying, just shrugging and be like, well, yeah, it happens. It's like, well, yeah, you know, she played good defense, Caitlin will play better offense. He's now established himself as the softest coach in the W. The softest coach. But Garda shows how much respect they have for her in a game. LeCon didn't play defense. She and her coach, every other team.
The backlash was instantaneous and brutal. Fans and critics alike began taunting the coach for his comments, claiming he had gone soft and was essentially bowing down to a rookie who had just disrespected him. People couldn't understand why a coach who had just seen his team get shushed and waved away would turn around and validate the very person who did it. The narrative quickly shifted from the game itself to a heated debate about whether giving Clark her flowers was a sign of respect or a total admission of defeat by the veterans.
But Garda shows how much respect they have for her in a game. LeCon didn't play defense. She and her coach, every other team knows you can grab and foul Caitlin. I mean, LeCon is a good defender. If you watch LeCon play another game, she just hacked Caitlin. I'm going to be real. She just hacked Caitlin. It's realistically that's what happened. They sent out great post, didn't catch this from Ken Swift. Even after shushing him, LeCon, at the end of the day, look, you would hope that a player shushing you is not going to cloud your.
This is where Stephanie White stepped in to draw a line in the sand. As a legendary figure in the sport, she saw the toxic environment brewing and decided to defend Clark and the right to praise her. White didn't care about the taunts or the soft labels being thrown around. She understood that acknowledging Clark's greatness isn't a weakness, it's a necessity for the survival of the sport. She took a stand against those who were holding on to petty grudges, making it clear that the era of hating on Clark for her success was officially over.
At the end of the day, look, you would hope that a player shushing you is not going to cloud your, or whatever personal feelings a player has for you or personal feelings you have for a player, shouldn't cloud your judgment when it comes to talking about the sport. And too often we see in the WNBA, in the NBA, especially when it comes to, I've seen it a lot in English sports about Premier League, where like people hold grudges and they use those grudges to give completely incorrect and awful basketball opinions.
To understand why this praise was so controversial, you have to look at the game plan that was executed against Clark. The Sun didn't just play defense, they sent out Kayla Thornton with what appeared to be a license to hack. For over 36 minutes, Clark was bumped, bruised, and hammered every time she touched the ball. It was one of the most physical displays of defense we've seen all season, specifically designed to rattle her and force her into frustration. Yet, despite the constant contact and the intentional rough play, she still managed to find a way to dominate.
Where like people hold grudges and they use those grudges to give completely incorrect and awful basketball opinions. And I'm being real here. It's one of those things now where you're seeing a coach in Rashid Mazian who Caitlin despises. Like, there are coaches, I can guarantee you there are coaches Caitlin likes that will publicly talk shit about her. Rashid Mazian, Caitlin, you can tell Caitlin despises that man.
The coach admitted as much in his post-game remarks, acknowledging that the defense was designed to give her no space or time. He noted that even with a defender practically glued to her jersey and hacking at her arms, Clark still dropped 25 points. He confessed that none of those shots were easy and none of them were comfortable, yet they all seemed to find the bottom of the net. It was a staggering admission that their best efforts to break her mentally and physically simply hadn't worked. He was effectively saying that she is unguardable.
Who Caitlin despises. Like, there are coaches, I can guarantee you there are coaches Caitlin likes that will publicly talk shit about her. Rashid Mazian, Caitlin, you can tell Caitlin despises that man. She despises him. And look, Rashid Mazian as a coach, it's an interesting one because it turns out MMS might have coached that Belgian team. But if you watch his teams play, like, given the talent that he has had at his disposal, I feel like he's been an okay he's been a good tank commander. Like, he's been good at what he set out to do, as in, be as...
Critics weren't buying the humble
act though. They pointed out that Mazian has himself as one of the softest coaches in the league by refusing to stand up for his players after being publicly mocked. When Clark shushed him, he didn't react. When she waved bye-bye to his team, he didn't offer a rebuttal. Instead, he basically did a version of the Hailey Van Lith shrug, essentially saying, "What do you want me to do? She's just that good." This lack of fire has led many to believe that the Suns' coaching staff has already been mentally defeated by the Clark effect.
Getting shushed by a player that you're a fan of a player. There's absolutely no way if you're getting shushed by a player that you're a fan of said player. But at least he's not letting that cloud his judgment. And, he could have very well, if he wanted to say anything negative about Caitlin Clark, he could have. But decided to use this, if nothing else, to defend his own player. He made sure as hell he was defending his own player here. And look, by defending his own player, you got to prop up Caitlin at the end of the day. But yeah, that's the video.
There is a deep-seated animosity between Clark and this particular coaching staff that goes beyond basketball. You can see it in the way she looks at their bench and the way she carries herself when she plays them. It's been reported that Clark genuinely despises the way they approach the game, particularly their reliance on overly physical, hack-a-player tactics. She isn't just playing for a win, she's playing to prove a point to the people who think they can bully her out of the league. That shush wasn't just for the crowd, it was a personal message to the man holding the clipboard. The coach's defense of his own player, Layla Khan, was equally interesting. He tried to frame the aggressive hacking as a learning experience for his young defender. He suggested that playing against someone of Clark's caliber would teach her how to be more effective in the future. But many analysts saw through this, arguing that he was just trying to justify a strategy that bordered on dangerous. By propping up his players' effort while simultaneously praising Clark, he was trying to walk a tightrope that few in the league have been able to navigate successfully. Stephanie White's defense of the situation highlighted a major problem in the WNBA and the NBA alike. She pointed out that too often personal grudges and petty feelings are allowed to cloud professional judgment. We see it in English sports like the Premier League all the time, where people hold on to hatred for a player and use it to give completely incorrect and awful basketball opinions. White's argument was that if you can't see the talent and the impact Clark is having because you're mad she shushed you, then you probably shouldn't be commenting on the game at all. The reality is that Rashid Mizian has been a decent tank commander for the Sun, keeping them as competitive as possible while navigating a roster that often lacks the top-tier talent of other squads. His teams rarely get blown out, and they always show up with a level of physicality that makes opponents uncomfortable. But when you're playing against a generational talent like Clark, that scrappy identity starts to look like desperation. Being a good coach who can keep games close is one thing, admitting you have no answer for a rookie is a different level of honesty. What makes the taunting of the coach so significant is the precedent it sets. It suggests that there is a right way to talk about Caitlin Clark, and it usually involves downplaying her achievements or focusing on her flaws. When a coach breaks that unwritten rule and speaks the truth about her greatness, the old guard turns on them. They view it as a betrayal of the league's competitive culture. Stephanie White isn't just defending a player, she's defending the truth against a wave of manufactured outrage and forced rivalry that shouldn't exist. The hack-a-Caitlin strategy has become a fact of life for the Indiana Fever, but the Connecticut Sun took it to another level. We have seen her take more hard hits against this team than any other opponent this season. It's a deliberate attempt to see if she has a breaking point. But every time she hits the floor and gets back up to sink a logo three, she's sending a message back to the coaches who sent the hit. The shush was her way of saying that no amount of physical punishment is going to stop the inevitable rise of her brand and her game. There's a sense that the Sun coach was essentially admitting defeat without actually saying the words. When you shrug your shoulders and say, "She still scored 25 on tough shots," you're telling the world that your game plan failed. This is why the fans are so upset. They want to see a coach who is angry, a coach who demands more from his players, and a coach who doesn't let a rookie dictate the emotional tone of the game. By choosing praise over anger, he established himself as a fan of the game rather than a fierce competitor in the eyes of many. Stephanie White knows exactly what's happening here. She's seen this movie before, where a transcendent star enters a league and disrupts the established hierarchy. She knows that the veterans and the old-school coaches are going to resist as long as they can. By defending Clark after the taunting began, White is acting as a bridge between the past and the future. She is reminding everyone that the league is better when its best players are celebrated, regardless of whether they've paid their dues in the way the traditionalists expect them to. The bye-bye wave at the end of the game was the final nail in the coffin for the Suns' dignity that night. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated confidence that you rarely see from a first-year player. It showed that Clark isn't just aware of the target on her back, she welcomes it. She knows the coaches are talking about her in the locker room, and she knows they are sending players out to rough her up. By waving them off, she was telling the entire Connecticut organization that their era of intimidation was officially over. Even after being shushed and mocked, the coach insisted that he wouldn't let his personal feelings cloud his judgment. He acknowledged that he had to be professional and talk about the sport honestly. This is a rare trait in a league where emotions often run high, and post-game press conferences can turn into venting sessions. But while he thought he was being professional, the public saw it as him being a fanboy. The line between showing respect and showing weakness has never been thinner than it is right now in the world of women's basketball. The comparison to the Premier League is actually quite spot on. In those circles, managers will often refuse to acknowledge the skill of an opponent if there's been a touchline spat. They will give awful opinions just to stay loyal to their own side. Rashid Mizian broke that mold. He chose to give a fair assessment of a player he clearly respects, even if that player feels the exact opposite about him. It takes a certain level of security in your own position to admit that the person who just insulted you is actually the best in the business. However, the fact remains that Clark despises the way the Sun play. You can see it in her body language every time there's a whistle. She's tired of the grabbing, the holding, and the hacking that seems to be the only way teams can slow her down. When she succeeds in spite of those tactics, she feels a sense of vindication that she isn't afraid to share with the world. The taunting of the coach was just the byproduct of a player who has reached her limit with the old-school way of doing things in the WNBA. Stephanie White's intervention is crucial because it gives other coaches and analysts permission to be honest. If a legend like White says it's okay to praise Clark, then maybe the next coach won't be so afraid of the backlash. She is trying to shift the culture away from this weird, forced animosity and toward a place of mutual respect. She knows that Clark is the tide that lifts all boats, and trying to sink that boat with petty taunts and aggressive defense is only going to hurt the league in the long run. In the end, the Sun coach did his job. He made the game competitive. He pushed Clark to her limits and he defended his own players' effort. But by praising the enemy, he inadvertently became a target himself. The world of sports rarely rewards nuance, and his attempt to be fair was seen as a sign of surrender. It's a strange time in the league when a coach is criticized more for being complimentary than he is for losing the game. It shows just how polarizing Clark has become and how much pressure is on everyone involved. The narrative of the soft coach isn't going away anytime soon, especially if the Sun continue to struggle against the fever. But as Stephanie White pointed out, the respect he showed might actually be the most hardcore thing he could have done. It takes real guts to stand up and tell the truth when you know it's going to make you a laughingstock among your peers. He chose to acknowledge the greatness unfolding in front of him rather than hiding behind excuses or bitterness. And that is something that should be admired, not mocked. As we move forward, the rivalry between Clark and the Connecticut Sun is only going to get more intense. The shush and the bye-bye are now part of the league's lore, and every future matchup will be viewed through that lens. Whether other coaches follow Metzian's lead and start giving Clark the credit she deserves remains to be seen. But one thing is for sure, with people like Stephanie White in her corner, the rookie isn't just winning games. She's winning the war for the soul of the league one bye-bye at a time.